Hi everyone, welcome back to the Big Brain Academy YouTube channel. Today is our second lesson for our high school week, and our topic will be slope for the big brain. So let's get started. What is the definition of slope? Slope is a number that describes the measure of steepness and direction of a line. In other words, it is the rate of change. So in this graph, we would describe the slope by the direction it's going in, how steep it is, and how much it is changing per unit. Now let's look into the types of slope that we encounter in algebra. Now we encounter 4 different types of slope, the first being positive slope, which is when the line slants up and the slope is a positive number. The second is a negative slope, when the line slants down and the slope is a negative number. The third slope we encounter is undefined slope, which is when a given line is vertical and the x-coordinate never changes, so the equation is written as x equals whatever integer that it is. Our fourth example is zero slope. This line is always horizontal and the y-coordinate never changes, and the equation is written as y is equal to whatever integer that it is. Now, one important thing to remember is that the steeper the line, the larger the slope. Now, let's put this into perspective with some graphs. Our slope on the left would be considered a positive slope since it is slanting upwards. Our slope on the right would be considered a negative slope because it is slanting downwards. So let's get on into our next 2 examples. Now our slope on the left would be a zero slope because our line is horizontal, and the slope on our right would be an undefined slope because the line is vertical. So in algebra, we can't always be this general with slope. So we use specific numbers to describe it. Now we have 2 methods to find these slopes, and let's get into that right now. Our first method is a rise and run method. Now in algebra, slope is always represented as m, and our equation would be m is equal to rise over run. Now to do this method, you'll always need a graph, but we do have another method for when we don't have a graph. So let's go over our steps. First, let's look at 2 points on our line. So we have 1, -1, and 3, 3. Now we're going to start off by finding our rise. Now our rise is going to be either up or down, and don't forget, going up is positive and going down is negative. So let's go ahead and find our rise, which is positive 4. Now we're going to find our run by going left or right until we reach our second point. And remember, going to the left is negative and going to the right is positive. So our run is positive 2, so let's plug that into our equation. And we simplify if necessary, which we can obviously do here. So our slope would equal 2. Now let's get on to our next method, which is a slope equation. Now for this method, you do not need a graph to use it. So if you were just given a pair of points and asked to find the slope, you could do it with this. Now our equation is m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You may be confused with what y2 is and what x1 is. That is just our way of separating the 2 different coordinates that we have. And it is important to remember that your coordinates must correlate. So if you start off with your first point on the top, you must start off with your first point on the bottom. So let's go ahead and pinpoint the same points on our graph again. We have 1, -1, and 3, 3. So let's go ahead and make 1, -1 our x1 and y1. And let's go ahead and make 3, 3 our x2 and y2. So let's go ahead and first begin with subtracting our y coordinates, which are 3 minus -1. Now let's subtract our x coordinates, 3 minus 1. Now let's simplify. We have 4 over 2, and that simplifies down to 2. Now this is a very vital component in the New York State Regents, so let's get into some problems that have popped up on past Regents exams. So our first example is, what is the slope of line L in the accompanying diagram? So let's use our rise and run method for this. So let's find our rise first, which is positive 2. And then we have a run of -3. So when we put this into our rise-run equation, we would get m is equal to 2 over -3. And we can simplify that down to -2/3. Now, like I had stated before, we cannot use a rise and run method when just given a pair of points. You would have to use our slope equation. So let's go ahead and use that equation right now with our second example, which is what is the slope of the line containing the points 3, 4, and negative 6, 10. Let's start off by labeling point negative 6, 10 will be x1, y1, and point 3, 4 will be x2, y2. M is equal to 4 minus 10 over 3 minus negative 6, and when we simplify that down, we get negative 6 over 9, which simplifies down to negative 2/3. Now our last example, what is the slope of line L shown in the accompanying diagram? Let's use our slope equation again for this method. Now let's start off by labeling our points 3, 0 as our x1, y1, and our points 0, negative 4 are x2, y2. So let's subtract our y's, negative 4 minus 0, and then subtract our x's, 0 minus 3, to get negative 4 over negative 3, which equals 4/3. Now we are done with examples for today, but we have a bonus on why we call our horizontal and vertical lines zero and undefined slopes. So let's use our slope equation to put this into perspective. So let's go ahead and pinpoint 2 points on our line. We have 1, 4 and 3, 4. So our point 1, 4 will be our x1, y1, and our point 3, 4 will be x2, y2. So when we subtract our y's first, we get 4 minus 4, and then when we subtract our x's, we get 3 minus 1. And when we simplify, this equals 2. 0 over 2 is equal to 0. So this is why this is called a zero slope. Now, if we were to use our rise-run method, we would not be able to rise at all, but our run would be 2. So when we plug that into our equation, we'd still get 0 over 2, which is equal to 0. So for our undefined slope, let's pinpoint 2 more points on our line. So our first will be 2, 8, and our second point will be 2, 2. Now when we subtract our y's, we get 8 minus 2, and when we subtract our x's, we get 2 minus 2. When we simplify this down, it equals to 6 over 0, and that simplifies down into undefined, because you cannot divide any number by 0. If we were to use our rise-run method again, we would be rising 6 units, but we wouldn't be running any units. We'd be running 0 units. When we plug that into our equation, we have 6 over 0, which is undefined. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video and it cleared up any confusion you guys had with slope. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos, and go check out our TikTok and Instagram. We hope you guys join us next week, and thank you so much for watching.